My name is Mary Kate Schneeweiss. I'm a senior environmental planning specialist at Beals and Thomas. I go by MK and my pronouns are she, her. And I'm here tonight with my colleague Stacy Minahan. And then we have our colleague online, Jackie Boyer. So we are together preparing the open space and recreation plan updates. Stacy, do you want to say a couple words about Beals and Thomas?
Sure. Yeah, you can go to the next slide if you don't mind. So just to give you a sense of who we are. So I'm Stacy Minahan, a principal with Beals and Thomas, and actually we're thrilled to be here tonight. I live in the next town over in Norwell, but also this is our third time assisting Cohasset with the open space and recreation plan update. So it's really exciting to be able to kind of track the history of it and continue to assist the town. So just to start off the night, some guiding principles for the forum: be present. Assume good intentions and be mindful of others, open to different perspectives, make space and take up space. We definitely want to hear your input. That's the purpose of this public forum. You don't need any expertise. You have the expertise. You live in the town. You know what your open space and recreation needs are, and no silly questions. So I would say feel free to, interrupt us throughout the evening if you have questions. And obviously at the end, there'll be time for questions, and we will answer them as well as we can.
Next slide.
So just very quickly, so you know where we're coming from. So MK is an environmental specialist. I'm a wetland scientist. Our colleague Jackie is also an environmental specialist. We work at a firm that's multidisciplinary with civil engineering, land surveying, landscape architecture. That's sort of the design side of the firm. And then MK, Jackie, and I work in our planning and environmental services group. So we do a lot of land use entitlement, but then a lot of municipal work as well: park and trail projects, open space and recreation planning, ecological restoration projects, things like that. So that's our perspective as we are presenting the research that we have found to date for this update.
Okay, next slide.
Stacy, I'm sorry to interrupt. Oh, there we go. I was going to say the slide is not changing virtually, but it just did.
Perfect. Thank you, Jackie.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Should be good. Okay, excellent. Next slide. All right, so I'm just going to start by giving folks a little primer on what is open space and recreation and what do you do with an open space and recreation plan. So as you might already well know, open space is generally land that is undeveloped or left in its natural state. It can serve a variety of functions. Obviously, the mental health benefits of being in the outdoors, as well as the physical health benefits, are documented very well. And it is important to protect these resources. So for the purposes of an open space and recreation plan, open space is undeveloped land or sparsely developed land like ball fields that doesn't have necessarily a structure or building on it. That presents recreational opportunities as well as opportunities to interact with nature and scenic views. This can include conservation land, it can include farmland, buffers along roadways. One important aspect of open space is protection. So just because a land is currently undeveloped doesn't mean it is going to remain that way forever. And one of the purposes of an open space and recreation plan is to target what land needs protecting. So a lot of the open space in town is owned by public entities. So for instance, Wampatuck State Park is owned by the state of Massachusetts, or Town Common is owned by the town. Those are likely very well protected pieces of land. There's also open space areas that are held in by private entities but are open to the public. So for instance, I know Holly Hill Farm is owned by a nonprofit. And I know that Sandy Beach, I believe, is owned by an association of residents, but it's open to residents of the town. So those are privately held lands, but they're publicly accessible and likely have some level of protection. Open space can also include land that is not protected or owned by an entity that has an interest in protecting it, but can be targeted for acquisition. So the idea would be to look at land that could serve an open space or a recreation purpose and, be aware of what opportunities there are to preserve or acquire that land. Next slide, please. So we spoke a little bit about recreation. There are two types of recreation that we typically see. Passive recreation is the kind of recreation that overlaps the most with natural open spaces. Think hiking, horseback riding, trails. You might find examples of that in Cohasset at Wheelwright Park, which has trails, has a skating pond, but is a largely natural state. There's also active recreation, which is more structured, like ball fields. Those would be in, for instance, Milliken Bancroft Field at the high schools. And those would be, those require more alteration of the landscape than simply a piece of open space that's left for passive recreation. Next slide, please. All right, so why write an open space and recreation plan? Open space and recreation plans are approved by the state through their Department of Conservation Services. And what this plan does is it serves several purposes. On the town's end, it can help target your future for open space over the set period of time to make sure that all residents are getting the benefits of open space. It is up to each town to develop their own goals for an open space and recreation plan, and that is part of what we're going to be doing here tonight. It also helps manage growth in the town, so you see the areas that you want protected and can try to direct development where it's appropriate. It is one of many tools that helps do that. And the last piece of it is that by virtue of having a plan that's approved by the state, it lets you be eligible for grant programs that the state administers. So if you have an action identified in your open space plan and you're really gung-ho to move forward with it, the state may have opportunities to fund that action usually with a match from the town. Next slide, please. So Stacy had alluded to this a little bit, but Cohasset actually has a very long history of open space interest. I learned today from Alix that Town Common is one of the few oceanside commons in the country, and it was established in the 1670s, so almost 400 years old. A lot of what we see as kind of the keystone open space areas in town were established in the early 20th century. Some examples are there: Whitney Thayer Woods, Bancroft Bird Sanctuary. Some of these were established by organizations like the trustees, some of them by public entities. The town has had a history of open space planning going back to at least the 1960s. There have been several unofficial planning efforts that are internal documents that were never officially approved. But the first open space and rec plan that the town had was published in 1996. And there have been 3 updates since in 2001, 2009, and 2019. And those are the ones that Beals and Thomas was involved in. So as part of the open space update, the plan from 2019 is going to need to be revisited. There are 5 major goals from the 2019 plan. Each of those goals had a list of actions that were designed to help implement that goal. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over the 2019 plan just to make sure we keep things moving, but generally the goals and objectives were to prioritize open space protection in town, improve access to recreation resources, and make changes to town staff and administration to enable folks to make those changes. For instance, one of the actions identified was to formally establish the Open Space and Rec Committee as a standing committee, as opposed to a committee that was convened on an ad hoc basis just to update this plan, which I believe was done, and you can put that on your list of accomplishments from the 2019 plan. But some other recommendations from the 2019 plan were outreach efforts to make sure the public is aware of various open space resources, as well as changes to regulations such as the zoning bylaw to better enable protection of open space areas. So these goals are going to be revisited fairly comprehensively as part of this update. Next slide, please. So we are fairly early on in the update process. We are on the far left where we are doing public outreach. We're trying to get as many folks in town to weigh in as we can. So this is one method of outreach that we're doing, we also did a public survey, which I hope many of you took. And we held a photo contest, which we will be announcing the winner of later tonight. As the update progresses, we'll be taking the public input that we hear tonight and from the survey and synthesizing it into a format that's actionable. So we'll move on to the drafting phase, where we'll prepare an update of the previous plan text and start developing those goals based on the common themes we're hearing. We'll share drafts of the plan with the Open Space and Rec Committee. They'll weigh in, of course, and we'll go back and forth until we have something that we are happy with. And at that point, we will submit it to the state for DCS review. So Department of Conservation Services typically takes some time to review. So they'll issue what's called an interim approval as soon as we submit. The current plan is valid through March of 2026. So we have a pretty good amount of time, about 6 months, to do that drafting effort. And then once we submit, that essentially vests the plan. So you will continue to be eligible for grant applications while DCS is reviewing. Something that is new for this plan is it will be issued for a 10-year period, not a 7-year period. So you will get a few more years of eligibility for those grant programs and a bit of a longer planning horizon, which is good to keep in mind as we're developing goals. But once the plan is approved, then you get into the implementation phase where the town has the document, has the goals, and has a target time frame for each goal and can start to just roll those out as they have availability. Next slide, please. So the content of the OSRP is going to be largely dictated by the state open space planning workbook. There's going to be several sections that we anticipate being largely the same from the 2019 plan, such as the community setting and the environmental inventory. Obviously, there will be some things that have changed, but the basic content of that will be the same. And then there'll be a fairly thorough revision to several sections, including an inventory of all of the conservation and recreation lands in town, an analysis of needs, which this forum is going to help inform, development of an action plan, a comprehensive documentation of all the public comments we receive, and then maps that show the open space in town. There's going to be a couple of new sections in the plan that weren't in the 2019 plan to reflect some of the state's new initiatives. Particularly, there'll be an environmental justice section, and there'll be a section on climate change to dovetail with a lot of the work that the state is doing to make sure all of their departments are advancing those goals. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on this, but there are several areas where grant funding is available from DCS once your plan is approved. Generally, those include acquisition of land either for conservation or for developing active recreation. It can be land that needs to be put into protection, such as for water supply. The town has actually previously received several grants as a result of the open space and rec plan. I believe Barnes Wildlife Sanctuary was one of the acquisitions that the town received through a grant from the state as a result of one of their OSRP goals. So it can be a very powerful thing to have a goal written down because it enables you to get funding for it moving forward. So do we have any questions on the content so far? We're going to have kind of a more open dialogue in a little bit, but just making sure everyone understands kind of what is an open space plan and why we are here tonight. Okay, excellent. So I hope all of you took the public survey. Would you raise your hand if you did take it? Excellent. We got most of the committee. Okay, great. Yeah, good turnout. So we were very impressed that the open space survey got about 30% more respondents than the 2019 version did. So a lot of engagement in town. Another thing that I was really happy to see was that there was a really broad spread of people, the length of time folks had lived in town. So there was about 18% of folks who had lived in Cohasset for less than 5 years. So relatively new folks, but still very engaged. There's also 31% of folks who responded to the survey have lived in Cohasset for over 20 years. So there's a great bank of knowledge there, a bank of history that we're very happy to be able to leverage. So in terms of demographics, folks reported an average household size of a little bit less than 4. And generally the respondents were 30 and above. We had kind of a peak around kind of in the 40 to 50 range was the average respondent age. But that's simply just the demographics. We were really happy to see so many people turn out. In terms of how people reported using open space in town, we saw a lot of emphasis on the town's coastal resources and legacy. So beaches and natural open space were some of the most frequently used resources in town. You can see very few people reported on the third line down that they never use beaches. That's the orange bar. So many people, the vast majority of people visit the beaches in Cohasset at least once a year. And you see a lot of folks who are using the natural open space areas weekly or even daily, which is excellent. Next slide, please. So one of the reasons that folks reported that they didn't visit open space areas was that there was insufficient parking available. And that's reflected in the fact that most of the open space are best accessible by car, with some being accessible by cycling and walking, and very, very little accessibility by public transportation. Another kind of interesting fact about, next slide, please. Another interesting nexus there was that despite the fact that parking is a major reason folks didn't visit open space areas, I was surprised to see that very few people, or comparatively few people, ranked highly acquiring parking. So I think folks really like the natural setting. They don't want to see more cars in the area. They want to preserve the natural setting. So that might be something that we dig a little deeper on as we're developing the plan. The things that were top priorities for town expenditures were protecting water quality land and acquiring land for beach and coastal access. So again, Cohasset's water resources coming to the forefront. Yes.
How to read the colors here.
Yes. Very sorry. So the Greek, well, I'll stay.
I'll point.
Thank you, Stacy.
So the green is high
High
priority.
Yep.
Blue is medium and orange is low. So protecting water quality, most respondents felt was a high priority. This many thought it was a medium priority and that many thought it was a low priority. And it was.
Yes, great question. Thank you for interrupting me to ask it. I didn't realize it was going to be so hard to read from back there. Give me a minute. Okay. So some of the other highly ranked priorities for what folks would like to see the town spend money on includes expanding recreation opportunities for folks who are younger than 18, as well as connections for cyclists. The additional recreation opportunities is also reflected in how folks felt they were served by existing recreation opportunities. So fairly far and away, folks thought that adults were best served by the existing recreation opportunities. And Stacey, I'm going to ask you to be my Vanna White again.
Sure.
So this plan, we have the youngest, at the top, we have the youngest age groups, 1 to 4, 5 to 9, seniors, adults, 10 to 12-year-olds, and teenagers is the order. This is roughly ranked by how many folks were most to least satisfied, the highest percentage of very satisfied to lowest percentage of very satisfied.
And it goes from left to right again with very satisfied, the green, satisfied, not satisfied, no opinion is the teal color.
Right. So, yeah, so more than 70% of folks were either satisfied or very satisfied with recreation opportunities available for adults compared to less than 40%, I think 38%, or yeah, about 38% of folks were satisfied or very satisfied with recreation opportunities for teenagers. So that's definitely something I think folks will want to drill down on more in the plan. And in terms of recreation resources that folks would like to see more of in the town, again, we've got green is we need more, blue is we have enough, and yellow is we need less. So, and the chart is ordered from highest percentage of folks who said we need more to lowest. And the highest recreation needs that were identified in the town were harbor and river access points, as well as boat mooring. So again, Cohasset's coastal setting being very important to the folks who use open space and rec areas. So those are some of the major themes we're seeing as part of the public input session. And now we're interested in hearing what you have to say about those. So we have a couple of seed questions on the screen that you can feel free to weigh in on. But tonight is about anything, any input you want to give. I think at this point, you're also, please also feel free to go up and use the activity. So we have on the left, we have Post-it notes and pens where you can put a sticky where you would like to see open space improvements on a map of the town. There should be labels on there, but let us know if you have any trouble orienting yourself. On the right, we have a list of topics that we could cover in the open space and rec plan, and we'd like you to just make a little hash mark next to any topic that you would like to see the OSRP focus on. So this is going to help the Open Space and Rec Committee and Beals and Thomas guide what we do with the data in the plan. But I will now open it up for general questions.
And I will come around with a microwave phone, not a microwave.
Oh, and for folks in the Zoom, please feel free to pop any question in the Q&A. And if you would like us to mark input on either of the activities, please also pop that in the Q&A, and we can reflect that as well.
Sure.
Okay. My name is Kevin. I live in North Cohasset. Speaking for myself, I'm also chair of the planning board. I took the survey, and one of the things I was wondering was, is there a way to account for the connectivity or lack thereof of our existing spaces? Because I would think having two existing spaces with some level of open space connectivity between them, or something that facilitates a way to get from one to the other without traversing a neighbor's yard with permission, or in the absence of sidewalks and walking on narrow streets, you have to get into a car to go a short distance. We live in a relatively small town to access the resources of an open space. There's a value quality there that I don't recall that being really a factor in the Q&A, the questionnaire. And I was wondering how Beals and Thomas will account for that, because all things being equal, connected open space has a higher value than non-connected open space. There's parts of town that have access to playgrounds and open space out their backyard or at the end of the street that other parts of town don't, and they require getting into a car, they require going to another part of town, or they require traversing streets with narrow No sidewalks, dangerous roads, very difficult to even bike or sightlines. So I would just like to hear an answer on that, and I'd like, if it hasn't been a factor in the questionnaire, I'd like to see, that be a, criterion in the future analysis of this.
Yes.
Great question.
It was working. It was working, yeah.
All right, well, first, thank you for being here. Also great comment and question. You're hitting on a couple different things. So the survey is a tough one to include a question like that in and to get specifics. It certainly could have been a question in terms of is connectivity an issue in town? I think in answer to that question, we would love to hear if folks have specific areas that are, I'll call them open space deserts, you know, those neighborhoods that you talked about that aren't able to just walk to an open space area. I think looking at neighborhoods like that and then looking at the existing open space lands and is there any opportunity for acquisition? Could certainly be a goal if the committee felt it was an appropriate one. So that's sort of the issue of how open space is spread out through town. The other issue of connectivity, which is good for the people using the open space and also increases the habitat value of your open spaces, is one that is usually part of an open space goal and action plan where coming out of the plan, the committee, and I don't want to speak for this committee, but speak for my town, where I'm on the open space committee, we are looking at maps of all of our open space lands, owned by various entities and trying to figure out, okay, we have sidewalks here. We don't have sidewalks here, we've got a boardwalk here. This piece of land, if we acquired it, would let us connect over, or can we go through Wampatuck? Because we also share Wampatuck with you folks. So that strikes me more as a goal that or an action item that would come out of this plan to identify open space areas to be acquired for those neighborhood deserts and for connectivity. But it's certainly a really important piece that, like you said, vastly increases the values of open space across many different characteristics. Does that answer your question? But so, if people have specific ideas tonight, absolutely write them down or let us know what they are and we'll write them down, or you can email us after and we'll make sure that those specific ideas get into the plan now as a jumping off point for the future as well.
And just to add a little bit, one of the maps that the open space plan is going to have is a map of all of the existing open space areas in town. So there'll be a really good resource to look at connectivity where you can, we typically do it. Actually, this is a great kind of starting point in the back of the room. We typically show if we have data on parking areas, roads, so you can get a sense of where connectivity is needed. So that's definitely a great comment. Thank you for that. We have
MK, is it possible to show the map that was on the slides a few slides ago?
yes, I believe, Julia, that was slide 7.
Thanks. We had someone in the audience asking.
Much appreciated. That one.
I think I was surprised at the survey that lower down in priority was, there was a question about connectivity, open space and protecting land and the box other, and that was at the bottom. That caught me surprised, but I understand how, and agree with the priority being, you know, access to the harbor and I also wanted to add, there's some existing trails that a lot of people use that are actually on some private land. So we might, and I think people would be surprised, so we might want to mark some of those trails that just want to go right park that people tend to assume that everything is protected. And so I think it might be nice to kind of even mark that. And so Cause that, if that could be lost, then I think it's a lot of. Um,
And I'm sorry, I missed your name.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Those are great points and, yes, to the trails on private land in every community, right? And then something happens and you're surprised that it's gone. So that could certainly be a note to discuss with the community. Maybe that's a priority to look at, okay, where are the trails that people are using? What can be done, if anything, to protect that? That's very do folks in this room have the same perspective that came through on the survey in terms of the age groups that were well served versus underserved by Cohasset's open spaces? I think it was teens were one of the lower groups in terms of having appropriate open space and recreation facilities for them. Or are there other groups or other needs that you see? I mean, I will say the survey response was outstanding. It's really hard to get survey responses for something like this. So this was really great. We're very excited about it, but obviously 250-ish people is a very small subset of the town, and we're trying to make it as, you know, broad and applicable as possible.
Mike Sardino, Harbor Committee. So one of the survey questions had to do with usability of the harbor. And very high response to or access to canoes and kayaks and all that. But also that would probably apply to the use of dinghies. So is there any possibility that in this report that there will be a recommendation that more boating access, more boating docks, etc., could be included, because that might be an avenue for towns to try to pursue some funds for building those, which aren't cheap. So I think that's really a critical piece. I also, because of the access to the river, Gulf River is a pretty remarkable ecosystem. It'd be really great to identify some properties there that could potentially either obtain easements on, or land will be cheap on the Gulf River, but purchase, because again, there's another opportunity for maybe a dock or something, because most of the banks are very muddy on a low tide, so it's not really feasible if you want. But if there's a way to get access to the river somewhere, Gulf River, Water Street, that would be fantastic too.
Those are great and very specific ideas. Thank you. We will definitely note them down, and I really like it. Haven't really heard in other communities or in my town the concept of easements, which is an obvious one, but instead of an outright acquisition. That's very interesting. So certainly because of this feedback and the survey and your input tonight, that will be reflected in the plan. I don't know whether it will be as strong as a recommendation. Usually what will happen is it'll be reflected as that we heard from the community that this was a need and these were some ideas to address it. And then in the goals and action items, when we work with the committee to establish those, there might be something like, you know, research or outreach to properties along the river to see if they'd be willing to give an easement or something. So there'll be an action item that comes out of that, but certainly trying to tee it up for funding.
And just to add, one of the things that we're going to be doing as part of the plan drafting is looking at other town plans, including the recent harbor plan, and checking any goals against what other documents may say, so we can make sure the town is aligned on everything. So
I think there's some land on River Street, is it, of South Main Street, that is, I don't know if it's trustees land or conservation land or something, but it actually does go to the river. But the problem again is the muddy banks and all that. So if you evaluate where that is and make some recommendations on that, there's a piece of land that it's pretty downstream, but it's gives you access to portion of the river.
Yeah, and we can note that down, that specific area and discuss whether that gets included as a very specific action item, right? Like investigate this property in particular. The other thing, and I'm going a little bit afield of the main topic, but, obviously with the resiliency sections that are being added now and sea level rise, et cetera, you know, we'll be talking with the committee about whether some of the acquisition goals look at, okay, what's the future flood elevations? Where are salt marshes going to be able to migrate to all those coastal resources that Cohasset has?
So, Connie Afshar, I'm with Open Space Committee. Some of the things that Mike just mentioned, are very, similar to issues accessing Little Harbor. They're a beautiful area that there's really no public access. And we've had, some folks come to our committee meetings, expressing frustration and wondering what can be done. Particularly, there's a big, kind of muddy, flat marsh area, pretty much opposite, parking lot for Sandy Beach. And I was wondering if there's some kind of elevated walkway that could be built, just something, so that the general public could access beautiful natural.
Hello, I'm Amy. I just thought of one thing, which is, I really love the parking spots at the Cohasset train station for the use going into Wampatuck on the rail trail. And I use that a lot. My husband and I do a lot of bike riding, so we like to park there. But again, that the road coming into the Cohasset train station is so dangerous. And there's just no, for biking even, or for walking, for sure. A couple of times I've had to try to walk and it's frightening. So I just feel like that would be a place to think about, just having more of a safe connection. Yes, North Main Street. So that's just one thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, and I'm familiar with that area, but, driving it. So is it sight distance or speed or kind of a little setup?
There's no shoulder. Exactly.
No shoulder, yeah.
No shoulder, and the cars go very fast.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, so some traffic calming measures or something to, yeah, that's a great idea. Yes, right, it turns right, yeah.
The same can be said for Jerusalem Road heading east from North Cohasset. As if you're heading to Black Rock Beach, going through that notch is extremely dangerous. There's zero sight lines, there's an elevation change where it dips down. There's zero shoulder, you're hemmed in by ledge. I call it a notch because there's ledge on both sides of that. That is a critical, dangerous point for accessing. Talking about Jerusalem Road, where you go Jerusalem and Forest, but on the west side of Forest as you head up towards North Cohasset, towards West Corner, when you start coming out of Black Rock Beach area there. I mean, even if you're on bikes, and people bike Jerusalem Road all the time. You know, you have to take up the whole lane as a bicyclist. If you do that as a pedestrian, you're taking your life in your hands.
Yep.
Right, Amy again, just to respond, I do agree, I live on that street there. But just one of my other biggest concerns is always to protect the ledge. So I wouldn't want to do anything to harm the ledge, however, I'm wondering if in that case, there could be like a speed bumps or, stop signs so that, cars have to stop rather than, some way like that, but not to harm the ledge
Mm.
on either side, is my point.
Yeah, I think in general, certainly the specific areas we've talked about tonight, but then kind of an action item of evaluating those different areas and what can be done.
Chris, I'm the town manager, I'm just trying to have a conversation. The town owns land by Black Duck Beach. That is, it's kind of just to the other side of the little triangle. So I'm just throwing out there, advocate for it, but that it's there, as we talked about, maybe adding some additional parking in there. So parking on Black Duck Beach, or improve some area there. It's been talked about, it would be require some work. There is town owned land, I'm just throwing it out there as something to be talked about.
Great suggestion.
Any thoughts on?
Mike Sardina again, opposite the beach parking lot, if you look out in the parking lot. When you come out the beach parking lot road, there's actually a trail across the sand dune through marsh to the Little Harbor. Everything to the left of that is conservation property. Everything to the right, I believe, is Sandy Beach Association. There's been some talk about trying to prevent or eliminate the trail that goes through because it's destroying marsh grass. But it's such an incredible resource. If there's a way to get a boardwalk through that, either on the border or in conservation land, I think that would be a huge asset to the town for sure.
And likely for,
We should identify those ownership parcels.
yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Related to that, there has been progress on that. There's been land identified that would access with a much smaller boardwalk than the one existing trail is on Classic Conservation Trust land, and it's pretty long and expensive. It would be to have something there, but the good news is the person that has been extensively working on that has needed or parcel of land that might work for that. So there is initiatives that are occurring with that look hopeful for providing some access. So great for multiple organizations to work together.
Absolutely, and things like that are great because when you make your goals and action items, it's always nice to have some that you think like, yeah, I think we're gonna be able to do this. We're gonna be able to check this one off. So I think identifying that in the plan and as a collaboration would make a lot of sense. Are there ideas or thoughts or questions? This has been great.
Yeah.
Really good, very specific feedback to note.
I was just wondering, Ginny Leclerc, I was just wondering if we had more information on what they said in the survey about the teens. Were they looking for more active recreation, more passive recreation? Or was it more of a gathering? And you don't have to have the answer.
Right.
But my question was, is it, to think about is to drill down, was it active recreation, passive recreation? Or more of like a social sort of recreation, like the teen center that exists, maybe improvements to that or something. I just wonder what the thinking was there, because it was such a large percentage of people that were interested in that.
That's a great point.
Yeah, we haven't gone through and really gotten into the nitty gritty of the individual written comments yet. There was quite a lot of them. But actually, I would love to know if anyone present tonight did answer that question, that we need more opportunities for teens, and if so, why?
Well, I could add, not knowing too much about this, I did love when the teen center was in downtown Cohasset. And now it's, from what I understand, it's moved to the library. and rec center, the rec center area that's below the library. So I wonder if part of that is just having more access to the downtown area and having more resources for the kids in that space. That was one thought. I did have something else to add on a separate note. One thing that I think about as Cohasset has expanding wildlife, and I see a lot of interest around the coyotes and other wildlife in Cohasset is to have a focus on, we talk about connectivity of open spaces and also wildlife corridors, and how we can be creating wildlife corridors so that these animals have a path to safely get from one parcel to another, and thinking about obstructions like fencing and other obstructions that may be forcing these animals into the roadways and other places that can be dangerous for.
Absolutely, that's a great, great note on that part of it, not just about connecting, but about looking at where blockages are as well. On the first comment regarding the survey, if when we go through all of the written responses, we aren't able to really suss out what was driving that team comment, we certainly could have as a goal, okay, these were a couple things, or this was the thing in the survey that really struck us and we want to drill down into. We're gonna have a goal to do another survey or an outreach or go to the schools, or, you know, to gather the information on what is the actual need, and then that will inform, you know, your next steps if it didn't come out in the survey.
There's a question in the Zoom chat from Vivian. Can we address year-round bathroom access facilities for areas of recreation and open spaces?
Yeah, I think the short answer is yes, that certainly can be noted as a need in the plan. The plan itself will not solve that challenge, but it could come out as a goal or an action item for the town to look at. Yeah, great point though. Anything else on the Zoom or other final thoughts from the group? This has been extremely helpful.
There is a question from Lee. Are we able to build a sidewalk to connect the harbor and village to Sandy Beach? A sidewalk on Atlantic Ave and or Beach Street?
So I'll turn to anyone in the room, if anyone happens to know the answer, if that's a definitive yes or a definitive no. In my town, sidewalks are a big challenge. We talk about them all the time, and so there's a lot behind it. And I will say, if we don't have the answer here, it will be noted as public input for evaluation.
Yeah, I'm not giving an answer, but the select board did form a sidewalk and connectivity committee, so that would most certainly be something to raise. As I said, that both Atlantic and Beach Streets have significant leisure issues, so that's one of the reasons that we're sort of looking.
Yeah, ledge topography and wetlands, that's our challenges as well in my town, but we can certainly note that down as, but for the person who asked the question, what was the name of that committee again?
It's a sidewalk and connectivity committee.
Roads and Sidewalks Connectivity Committee would be a good resource to reach out to. Last call for any final thoughts? All right.
All right, well, thank you so much for these comments. They're excellent and very much your time tonight is appreciated, and the input is gonna definitely help shape how we develop the plan. I would like to end on a couple notes. First, do you mind advancing the slide one, Julia? Thank you. So one of the questions we asked in the survey was, what would you be willing to do for future involvement? And we definitely had a lot of people who were willing to do a variety of things. I think the top one was supporting the community's application to grant programs and voting to acquire or create new open spaces. So there was definitely a lot of community interest. But I think this is not the last time that folks will have an opportunity to weigh in on the OSRP. I believe it will be out for public comment once the draft is finished. I think we would probably expect that Q1 2026, I would think. And are certainly going to be taking other feedback we get, not at public forums or in surveys. I think, we had talked about doing perhaps a farmer's market table, so there'll be plenty of opportunities for folks to give more feedback, but just wanted to end on the call to action based on the community interest in various open space avenues, but we are going to now announce the winner of our photo contest. All right, so the winner was Margot Cheel. This is going to be the cover of our open space and rec plan. I understand that she is a pilot, so this is a airplane shot, which is very cool. Is Margot in the audience either online or in person tonight?
And I have to say, MK might have seen this before, but I did not, and it is amazing.
Yeah, I did see this, yes. Say yeah?
That's her thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
And then we have runners up from Karen Murphy and Jack Buckley, and then another Margot shot of Cohasset Common. So a lot of really talented photographers in town. All right, any parting thoughts? Otherwise, we'll let you take some refreshments. Please feel free to fill out the activities as you file out, but thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you all.
Please feel free to take pizza with you. We have a lot left over. Thank you.
There we go. Okay. Phew.
It's a nice setup in here.
It is.
Maybe just say to the Zoom that you're gonna.
Those attending on Zoom, the webinar will be ending. Thank you.